All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Wednesday the 13th, Fed Day. So, that was the main story of the day. Trying to position a little bit lighter for these types of days, Fed days. They could be a little bit of a wild card. They're usually there's kind of talking after the fact, but this is what I said in the trading room earlier. They're always accompanied by some whipsaw moves as everybody tries to figure out if anything has really changed, if they're changing their tone, they're changing their language. So what did they say? They're committed to. It sounds like they're committed to raising rates. Of course, they're going to be they're going to weigh all factors, but it kind of seems like they're staying the course, and they want to raise some interest rates. Maybe twice more. I think they said in this year. So we'll just have to see. The one the one takeaway that I think is probably one of the most annoying things is, sorry to say this about our Fed, but they said that they want to do a conference every Fed meeting. So right now it's every other, and they call those the live meetings. But it sounds like they're going to want to do this every time. So it's just a bit noisy when you have the Fed speaking so much. It's one of those days where you have to kind of err on the being a little bit more conservative in case they do come out with new information. It's all part of the game, but just having them speak more frequently, I think just creates a bit more noise. So just analyzing the price action today, we did close on the lows. I'll just zoom in here. We started to fade a little bit going into the Fed announcement, which is right around 2 o'clock. You could see big red bar. We started to go down, and then we actually, talking about the whipsaw, we started to move back up here on the S&P futures, right back to that that 2 o'clock announcement, and then we crumbled the rest of the day through. So, is this a reversal bar? I mean, if you kind of back up and take a look at the price range, it's which I'm trying to do right now, it's a pretty small move. We're talking about 30, 40 basis points. We're not talking about a 2% move. We might be kind of getting to the end of this swing, but I'm not going to try to time that. We're above the short-term moving average. This yellow line that I have on my charts, which is the 5-period exponential moving average, just acts as a really good trend line to kind of see if you're maintaining the short-term trend. And maybe we're starting to turn in here a little bit after a nice move out of this consolidation. So again, I think overall, I'm not going to read too much into today's action. Nasdaq, kind of a toppy looking candle, but kind of looks like a shooting star candle. But we're still maintaining, again, the short-term moving averages. So we'll see what we get. We'll see what we get tomorrow. I'm not really making any major conclusions as I try not to let these Fed announcements kind of skew too much. Other than being, a little bit, as I said, a little bit more conservative going into these meetings, and especially this week. It's quadruple witching. As a reminder, all the indices rebalance this week. So every S&P index, every NASDAQ index, not just the S&P 500, but all the sector, all the equal weight sectors, your XRT, your ITB, your XBI, those all rebalance. So those can cause a little bit of volatility within single names. So I would watch out for that. A couple of the movers before I kind of just get into some names that I'm watching, but there wasn't very much that ended positively today. A couple sectors, your equipment stocks, which have just been on fire. This is your healthcare equipment stocks. This is XHE. I've talked about this before, but really this is where the alpha is in this year in healthcare. Versus, so I'm not going to rehash that whole thing, but IBB I think is up fractionally this year, the large cap biotech. But again, if you look at health equipment stocks and medical device stocks, they have had quite a year. So you could see the difference in those charts. The other one, PSCH, is up about 30% year to date. That's small cap biotech. So really, they continue to kind of move pretty well. IGV, which is the software ETF, also doing fine today. Again, maybe a little bit of a topping looking candle for the day. Small caps, I think, underperformed. They actually broke down a little bit, a little bit more. But again, they're still maintaining. We had one of these days here. This is a little bit more, I would say, of a bearish engulfing candle. It's covering the looks like the whole. It's engulfing the whole previous candle. But again, trying really not to read into too much. Into today's price action. On the flip side, the names that were down today, there was a couple areas that really got crushed today. And I didn't see any news on this group, so maybe I'm missing something. But the home builders, which were showing a little bit of life, something that I mentioned towards the end of last week as getting, another group that was participating pretty nicely, got squashed today. There was this big volume on Friday in XHB, so those got brought down today. There was a dip buyer in DHI, which it seems like whenever there's a big dip in these housing stocks, the choice one is DHI, where we see a call buyer. So I think this was around a $200,000 trade in DHI, DR Horton. Let me just try to bring this up. It was a sweep for July. I took some of these. I just thought this group was down a little bit too much today. I thought it was kind of an overreaction. So there was 4,000 of those. That was an opening trade, 192,000 notional. One of the few few pure opening transactions today. There's not a lot. It's tough to really read option activity this week because you have a ton of names that are you have a ton of names that are being rolled, right, to get out of June exposure and to roll and to go into either July or further out. A lot of trades that are going up even past. It was really difficult to analyze some of the action post FOMC. Because most of the trades are going up versus open interests. There was a little bit of Facebook calls that went up. There was a little bit of XLK calls that went up. There was a little bit of financials that looked like they were bought. But then there was a little bit of puts that went up too. So a lot of two-way stuff that went up post FOMC. A little bit of a pickup in put activity today. I would say today was more today was more two-way flow than we've probably seen in a couple weeks. I did see some aggressive put buying and some single names, right? I mean, we've been seeing puts in the indices, which a lot of times look like hedges. There was also a pretty big trade that went up in the VIX. They call this guy 50 cent, but there was 50,000 of these. August 22nd, 2847.5 calls. You could see it right there. They may have rolled out of some of this trade and gone into some further out. So again, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know their portfolio, but a lot of times when you see VIX calls or when you see SPY puts go up, a lot of times people are hedging and they probably have a decent. We've got a Fed meeting, right? It's an unknown, so we do see sometimes that people will put on some protection around those types of events. Any type of event that can kind of change things a little bit, we'll see a little bit of protection added. So other trades that kind of went up that are in more of the small cap nature that went up before the Fed meeting. We saw a little bit more Roku calls. This continues to look like a pretty good chart. I'm just long right now 100 shares of this. I unwound into this candle because this was my target all along in Roku. I got long around 37-ish, I think. And I took that off way above 40. Yeah, I think it was somewhere in here. I was adding. I've played Roku now a couple times, so I keep buying a little bit on the dip and then getting long again. It's a really nice name to day trade too. If you're a day trader, you get some nice swings with this name. But it still managed to close above. It closed close to the highs of the day. So pretty nice, and it's moving out and above this trend, and it's now above this purple line. This virgin point of control that I've got on my chart. So I think that's pretty good. So I went long. I stayed long 100. This Chinese internet group, they are not Chinese internet, but Chinese internet new IPO names. Pretty out of control at this point. It reminds me a little bit of the group of stocks. If you remember from 2017, there was a group that went crazy for a couple weeks. Anybody remember what group that was? It was all the blockchain stocks, right? So we're seeing that again. This Kua made a real nice move again today. A couple of traders played this in the room. I think they got long around $30, and took it off today into strength. IQ has been the big name, but it looks like IQ is starting to slow down a little bit. Maybe ready for a next move higher, or if not, maybe it's going to turn the corner and go lower. I don't have anything on in this one. I have a little bit on of what's this other one? Yeah, SOGO. I've got small stuff. How you should be playing with this type of stuff, in my opinion, right? Is really speculative. This stuff is really speculative. So if you're trafficking in this stuff, I really toned down the position size. So for example, I just have 100 shares on of this SOGO, which actually looks like it's a pretty ugly bar today, but still maintaining, above the 5-period exponential moving average. But yeah, I mean, this stuff is just like the blockchain stuff was. Remember, back then, in the middle of 2017, I was playing Riot, and I think I got into Riot around $8 and like sold it at 33. But we're talking like 200 shares that I bought, either 200 or 300 shares at $8. So it's super speculative, and you should be accounting for that in your position size. They're almost like lotto territory, this stuff. So yeah, they have the momentum, but I personally would not put, have positions on in 3 or 4 of these names. One, again, very speculative money to put into these names. They're fun to play, but these are not investments. These are these are trades. So anyway, wanted to cover that because I think they've been getting a lot of attention. Disney, there was a call buyer, a new name that kind of showed up today, GSK. Some August 43 calls that went up. There were some calls right before this name popped, Mac today. There's a little bit of Google, August 1340s. They always seem to buy, and I don't know the reason for it, but whenever we see option activity in Google, they always choose the GOOGs. We hardly ever see any option activity in the Google. There was some more VRX calls that went up. I've been watching this name. I've been in ENDP, which we also saw some call buying in today. This VRX hit a VPOC. I don't like to start a position in that sense. They are ripe for mini reversals. So I could give you plenty of examples of that. Not always. It's not 100%, but it's usually a good place to get out of a position and take a target. So that one has made a really nice move. I did finally take a target in ENDP, which I've been long since the beginning of the week. That's worked very well. I'm still long Teva. A couple names that I did not talk about yesterday that I sent out to subscribers. You have to be a subscriber of Tribeca Trade Group to get all my charts and setups that I'm looking at. But Take Two, I thought this was looking really good for a move today, and all the way through the value area and held up really nicely. And end of day, kind of a tough tape. So these gaming stocks look pretty good. I've been in ATVI for about a week or so, and that trade is really working out very well. It's been moving higher. I've been taking targets on as it's been moving higher, but I think Take Two could have more to go. Again, real nice move. I sent out a call spread actionable trade idea yesterday into this candle yesterday, and I think that trade is up about 35% from when I sent that out yesterday. So that's a nice move. Another name that I put on a position on yesterday, and don't mind talking about it, is Workday. So there's a lot of support in here. There was a big trade that went up yesterday in Workday, but it was tied to stock. Still, it's still a pretty large trade, and it means that somebody's got a decent position in Workday, regardless of its calls or stock. But I like the support here. This is a name that had earnings I think a little over a week ago, and the earnings were fine. But just like a lot of these names, right? If you go, like if you remember NTNX, Vive, Splunk, they all reported one day about 2 weeks ago, and none of them reacted well on earnings. They kind of ran up into the number a little bit too much, but this NTNX is now starting to react very well. I also have a small position on in this one. One other name to kind of look at, which I think is interesting, is Grub. You kind of have a inverted head and shoulders going on here, right? Your left shoulder, your head, possibly, maybe not perfectly, an inverted head and shoulders pattern, but I think it looks pretty good. I think it's worth maybe taking a little bit of a position here. Considering what it did last week, it kind of gave you a fake out here. Went higher intraday. So yesterday was the first close, which I think I talked about this name yesterday as well. But it is continuing on. So I think pretty good there. What else? I think I covered most of the bases today. So we'll leave it there. Again, I would say kind of give it another day in terms of the market. And see how we react tomorrow. Closing on the lows, the VIX closing on the highs. Sometimes not the best, not the best signal. But we'll see how things. Like I said, I've said this probably 10 times now in this video, but not reading too much into today. And then also for the rest of the week, with quadruple witching, I just think positioning on the lighter side. Most of the trades that I've been doing. I've been scaling down a little bit in size because it's just a pretty volatile week. All right. So that's it for today's recap. Have a great night and see you tomorrow.